ready for takeoff.
Thank you for coming. I'm glad everyone's excited to be at RubyConf. If you were looking forward to more Star Trek memes like at my RailsConf talk, unfortunately, you will be disappointed. Though I do really like the theme of the RubyConf swag this year with the NASA-themed space stuff. So I guess that was a missed opportunity on my part. But we will be talking about discovering machine learning in Ruby. So you could say we're exploring where a few Rubyists have gone before. That'll probably be my only Star Trek reference, maybe. I'm Justin Bowen, and I am Tons of Fun. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and some other things as Tons of Fun 111. GitHub, I'm just Tons of Fun. And I'm currently working as a CTO consultant for Silicon Valley Software Group. I'm also Director of Engineering at Ensight Surgical AI, where we're doing computer vision for surgical objects in operating rooms. So exciting stuff. I've been working with Ruby professionally since like 2008, and I've been working with Python for computer vision since about 2016. And so for me, computer vision is tons of fun. And I get a lot of joy from being able to run code with visual inputs and get visual feedback and outputs that, you can chart and you can highlight. So again, hope you have tons of fun. Just a bit of background. I've built a number of applications like drone mapping, which I did with an Irish ag tech company back in 2016, where we highlight different parts of the field using OpenCV to help farmers see problem areas or areas of their field that are ready for harvest. So I've done stuff from drones to dairy cows. Monitoring cow health is something that I did for a few years at the same company. It was quite a big pivot. But real-time computer vision with cameras is something that has actually been super engaging for me and is something that I'm working on right now, where in the operating room, we have 8 cameras monitoring at all times at 60 frames per second. Each camera has its own dedicated GPU that we're running our own. It's a really small image. Hope you can see, but it's highlighting the different hemostats, scissors, needles, sponges, and this is using a YOLO v7 model that was trained with PyTorch and is running through OpenCV, all on Python. But we're at RubyConf, and why am I talking about Python? So I did a RailsConf talk virtually about using Python computer vision with Rails applications. All of the examples I just showed you had Rails backends for the web and API, but all of the computer vision code is done with Python. And really, it's just a matter of, most machine learning libraries out there are built with C++ with Python bindings. And there are some Ruby machine learning and computer vision gems, but they're not as feature complete. So at this virtual conference during the Q&A, I got a question that asked, why not use Ruby? And, my response was because. like I said, most Ruby, like Ruby OpenCV, for example, which is what I used for this demo, I did just as a side project for highlighting leaf area and counting bud sites in cannabis plants. The Ruby OpenCV didn't have the functions that I needed, and Python is built alongside of the C++ implementation of OpenCV, so I went with Python again. But it did get me curious, with Ruby OpenCV, like I said, it's just a wrapper in Ruby for a C++ library. And I wanted to know a little bit more about what the options were for Ruby gems. And it's actually interesting. I definitely discovered some hidden gems. This is the hidden gems track. I meant to mention that in the first slide. But it's more than just Ruby packages. What I discovered is there's actually one person doing quite a lot of work with machine learning in Ruby. And so bear with me, but we will get back to the machine learning and a little bit of computer vision. But first, I wanted to talk about Andrew Kane. I'm not sure some of you might have heard of him. The man, maybe, the myth, the legend. I've been using gems made by Andrew Kane for about 10 years when I first found SearchKick, which is an Elasticsearch gem. And though all indications point to him being a real person that works at Instacart, there are rumors that he might not actually exist. I mean, look at that contribution graph. It's very impressive. Don't look at mine. I told you my handle, but please don't. It's been a hard year. You know, some people say he might just be an artificial intelligence. Some people might say he's a group of people working under a pseudonym. But at least it looks like he took a 2-week vacation, so that looks pretty human to me. So I even heard a theory yesterday that maybe he's why. Maybe. Whatever the case is, Andrew Kane is a hidden gem in the community. You know, I've yet to meet him or anyone who knows him. If you do, please introduce me. Be curious to thank him. But seriously, you know, he's published more than a few gems. He has 134 gems. And this is something that there are other people in the community, like Aaron Patterson has 190 something that he's contributed to. I know Rafael Franca is right up there with him. I think Samuel Williams, iAquatics, he has something similar to that with millions of downloads. But those are a lot of Rails core libraries like Rack and Active Support and Active Record. But to date, Andrew Kane has 153 million downloads for projects that seem to be mostly his contributions. His top downloaded project has 23 million downloads. I don't have any gems. I have a few Python packages, but you know, that's not the important part. He often tags the gems that he contributes with battle tested at Instacart. So again, probably just a guy that works at Instacart. His GitHub profile also says he lives in San Francisco, as do I. Never met him. So Strong Migrations is that most popular gem that has 23 million downloads. I've actually not personally used this, but it seems to be very popular and has a lot of safety features for running migrations. I've heard good things about it. Definitely worth checking out. Also, battle tested at Instacart. SearchKick I have used. You know, you can do full text search in Postgres, but SearchKick gives you a lot of other cool features using Elasticsearch. One of the interesting bits, other than the ones you see on the screen, are the ability to reindex in the background without any downtime. So you can have background jobs that reindex your Elasticsearch index without stopping the ability for your users to make searches. It has a similar query structure to SQL, and you know, you can do things like tomato or tomato, however you describe that, jalapeno with special characters. It handles spaces, misspellings, and you know, depending on where you come from, you might call soda pop, and it'll match that as well. These are his examples, and again, battle tested at Instacart. So there's also SearchJoy for analytics for your Elasticsearch, Mailkick, and ChartKick. Lots of the kicks, all of the kicks. Very popular for just Ruby one-liners that will give you nice JavaScript charts that you can have little popovers for. It also works with Blazor, which allows you to explore your SQL data, write some SQL queries, generate reports and charts. Battle tested in Instacart, but I also found out that Shopify uses Blazor quite a bit. So PG Hero is something that I have found recently. It's based off of a blog post written by Heroku and PG Extras queries, but it gives you a nice visualization and a dashboard to see common Postgres issues. There's also Dexter, which is automatic indexing for Postgres. It'll suggest indexes that you don't have by analyzing your slow queries. Group date for grouping temporal data, high top for group counts, active median for median and percentile queries. Ahoy Matey is actually the gem name of Ahoy, which is a first-party analytics for Rails gem. Ahoy Email, which is also first-party email analytics for Rails, and field tests for A/B testing. Again, this is an incredible breadth of Ruby gem contributions. Lockbox, awesome gem, predates the active record encryption. It does field-level encryption, integrates with things like AWS KMS, which is the key management service. And also he has a blind index gem that does encrypted field queries. So if you encrypt emails, you can still query and look up users by their email address. There's also Thunder SVM. I'm not going to talk about that much. And then there's this. What is the Ruby machine learning mole stack, if you will? So RubyML is an organization created by Andrew Kane on GitHub with MLStack as a repo that contains, these are the things I'm highlighting. It contains a bunch of other things too. iRuby notebooks, if you're familiar with IPython is kind of like Pry, similar to Herb. It's an interactive console. The notebook side of things is a web-based application where you can interact with code and have markdown in between and see the returns of the code. Vega is a visualization tool, similar to Chartkick, but a lot more powerful. Rover and Prophet we'll talk about a little bit. Rover is a data frames gem similar to pandas in Python. Prophet is for forecasting and prediction modeling. Numo and NArray, or NArray, if you will, is the Ruby version of NumPy. Again, NumPy is a fundamental n-dimensional array manipulation library that is crucial for a lot of matrix manipulation procedures. This is written in Ruby with C++ as its backing, and it is very performant. And then there's TorchRB, which is another gem from Andrew Kane that wraps PyTorch, or the library that is PyTorch. Whoa, and that's the end of my talk. It's not. I just hit a button. Thank you. No, I appreciate the claps. We got this. Oh yeah, right. I don't know, it just stopped. Still on the same slide. So SciRuby is an organization that put out iRuby. And like I was saying, IPython notebooks are really cool. I use Google Colab and have since, I think it was in beta, like 2016 or something. But it's Google Docs integrated, hosted Jupyter notebooks. Jupyter, I think, was an acronym for Julia, Python, and R. It doesn't support Ruby natively. But with iRuby, you can run Ruby inside an IPython notebook. So I think this is something that could be incredible as an accessibility tool for new Rubyists. Think about being able to share a gist or a link to some code and having it run in some hosted environment like Google Code Spaces, where they don't have to install any dependencies. They can just shift-enter through the cells, see the outputs. This is an example from the Cannabis computer vision, where it is creating a pretty visualization with the bud sites highlighted. But this is hosted on mybinder.org, which is like a free hosting of Jupyter notebooks. And it is using the Docker image that Andrew Kane has in the MLStack repo. And this is an example of using Rover and Prophet to do some forecasting modeling based on some of the data. You can see at the top, that's the data frame produced by rover, and at the bottom, that's the visualization produced by Prophet. Again, rover is simple, powerful data frames for Ruby. Prophet is time series forecasting for Ruby. So let's go back to Numo and array. It's similar to NumPy, but again, for Ruby. Before we get into Torch, just going to talk a little about data types. What is a scalar? One, that counts. Just a single value. A vector, multiple values, like an array, a one-dimensional array. A matrix is like a table. It's a two-dimensional array. Grayscale image is another form of a matrix. There are others, can't think of right now. An image is a tensor. So it's just different arrays, or it's an array of different matrices. So you have different color channels. Each color channel represents the color values of a given pixel. These are what are used for computer vision, and there are other types of tensors. You can have a tensor for image data, text data. GeoJSON multi-polygons are an example of a high-dimensional array where you have coordinate pairs in lists that outline different polygons on a map. These are all things you might come across when you're building applications. PyTorch is a framework that is written in C++, and it has become the open source machine learning framework, and it accelerates prototyping to deployment of production machine learning models. So PyTorch has its own implementation of Tensor, and TorchRB wraps that for us as Rubyists. So deep learning for Ruby, powered by libtorch. Libtorch is what PyTorch is based off of. Libtorch, like OpenCV, is developed alongside of Python bindings. So we as a community don't have access to all of the latest, greatest features unless we implement them. So how can we use Torch in Ruby? One of the ways would be an IPython notebook, like we just described. There is an IPython notebook available in that same repository that does use TorchRB. There's other ways you could do it. Maybe you want to do background jobs. You could use Sidekick and TorchRB to process images, videos, text, do some NLP for natural language processing. Really, it's all about what you want to do with it. So how can we use Torch to leverage an NVIDIA GPU with CUDA cores? This is something that I mentioned earlier in the talk. It's a requirement for the work that I do. And TorchRB gives us a way of communicating with libtorch to check for and utilize CUDA cores. If you're not familiar, it is the Compute Unified Device Architecture for accessing NVIDIA GPU cores. It's a great API. OpenCV supports CUDA, TensorFlow supports CUDA, PyTorch supports CUDA, and now we can access CUDA cores with Ruby. So TorchRB has Torch Text, again, for text classification, natural language processing, Torch Audio for computer audio, something that I've been interested in but haven't played around with much, Torch Vision, which is something I really enjoy, and Torch Rec, so you can make recommendation engines, and all of these things have models that you can just take off the shelf and use. So you can give your users these rich machine learning, AI, in quotes, features without really having to do anything unless you want to train custom models like you saw before with those surgical objects. YOLO is typically trained on the COCO dataset, but we'll get to that in a second. This is an example that is available in the ML Stack repo. It is the minced dataset. I call it minced. Looking at it now, It's not actually spelled that way. It's probably like MNIST or something. But it is a handwritten digits data set. So 0 through 9, handwritten in different handwriting. And you can train, evaluate, and predict what digit the computer is looking at using this IPython notebook with Ruby in it. So if we wanted to go a little further, there is a data set called COCO, which is Common Objects in Context. And Onyx, and again, this is just how I say it. I've also heard people say ONNX, but I like Onyx, is the Open Neural Network Exchange. The Onyx runtime is something that Microsoft put out that is, again, a cross-platform C++ library that gives you an interface for training machine learning accelerated with GPUs. So this is an example of using Ruby. You can see there on line 4, we're loading an image with MiniMagick. Line 7, we're loading the pre-trained model that was trained with the COCO dataset. Again, you can just download these models and run them. And then line 8 there, you see we're running predict. And lower down, you can see some of the bounding box drawing. The outputs are just another set of arrays, and the result would be this. So you can see now, at least for me, I can see why it's so interesting. It's really cool to be able to take a picture, take a video, and see what's happening in it. We have 3 bears. Maybe it's not something that's gonna make your next startup super profitable, but I think it's cool. So again, this is Ruby code accessing C++ code to utilize CUDA cores to give you this nice visualization. And so I mentioned before that my company uses a YOLO model, and YOLO stands for You Obviously Love Owls. Really, it's You Only Look Once. We're using YOLO v7 right now, and we have taken a pre-trained model and done what's known as transfer learning to be able to make our own custom objects that can be detected, like hemostats and scissors and needles and sponges, with the hopes of tracking and counting objects so that they don't get left in you. Anyway, that does happen apparently. Still today, there's a lot of work. This is my stack that I've been using for a while. I used to use Celery, now I'm using Factory Jobs, which is from Mike Parham, the creator of Sidekick, and it's language agnostic background jobs. So I can trigger jobs in Ruby and process jobs in Python. I use OpenCV, PyTorch, and TensorFlow, and I'll probably continue using Python because I still don't have feature parity with what these libraries offer. It is something that I'm very interested in, and hopefully there's a future where Ruby can do as much as Python can. So why in Ruby? Why not? And with Ruby, anything's possible. You can do machine learning in Ruby. It's really all about the community interest. And this is something that I think could attract a lot of new developers. I know there are, at least for me, people that are very interested in machine learning and quote unquote artificial intelligence. I think it's something that could really engage people. And, you know, we learn by reading, we codify that knowledge by writing and trying things. It's really just about curiosity to grow and teach and share with the community. Contributing can be as easy as being curious. Download the ML stack, click on the button in the repo to open it in mybinder.org, play around with it. Maybe you'll be inspired to do something. Ask questions. Really, you don't have to be a master in data science or a PhD in computer science. I'm not. I don't have any degrees, but I do get an opportunity to be the data engineer that puts all of this work together. You don't have to be an elite contributor pushing dozens of gems. I listed a few people before, but I mean, there are a lot of incredible contributors in our community, and I'm really grateful for all of them. Not just Andrew Kane, but I know Justin Searles has dozens, Kevin Newton has dozens, and again, it's not about how many gems you publish, because if it were, I've published 0, so what would that mean? You don't have to get on stage and give a talk. That's what I'm doing, but you don't have to. You don't have to have a big social media presence. Andrew Kane has a Twitter, but hasn't really engaged with it recently. He puts out a lot of work and kind of keeps private. And really, it's all about what you want to make out of it. You don't have to come to conferences. This is actually my 3rd conference that I've attended in like 15 years of programming. I'm really enjoying it. I've gone to like the last 3 and done virtual ones, but I really think that sometimes even just the smallest gestures of engaging, whether you're a new developer or someone with decades of experience, sometimes I gain the most from people asking questions because they're just starting out, and it makes me think of things like the question of, why not in Ruby? I never really thought about it. I always just thought, I have these clients, they want these products built. I just look for whatever's easiest to pull off the shelf. But if we want to, we can make it happen in Ruby. And that's my talk. I'm Justin Bowen. Tons of fun. You can clap now. Thank you. And unfortunately, we have 3 minutes for questions. So, have I played around with or looked at text-to-image with Ruby? No, I haven't, but that actually brings up an interesting point. You may see those text-to-image services on Twitter, or those services where you can upload various photos of yourself and you can get avatars generated. The cool thing about those is the people producing those, like Levels.io, the Twitter handle, he's put out a bunch of very successful products based on off-the-shelf tools. So you can make something like that, maybe not in Ruby unless you make the bindings that connect to the C++ libraries that can run those models. If there is an Onyx model that could do it, you potentially could do it with the Onyx runtime gem. But the cool thing is making a product out of something off the shelf doesn't mean you need to know how it works. Doesn't mean you read the white paper and understand the math and stuff, because I don't. I just run the models and make them go fast with factory. So yeah, I haven't done it, but definitely something that's interesting. One thing I thought about would be doing the same thing with pets. So if you do that, just remember who gave you that idea. I have really cute pictures of my cats in medieval formal wear. So someone did that though. They spent time doing that. Just auto-generated, charged $20. Any other questions? I'll just keep talking about cats. All right, great. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. And that's it. You guys can snack time.